Now I'm wearing my teacher hat and pretending that you're my students. We're going to start off with some sentence combining. I now try to embed sentence combining in almost every lesson I do. One of the things that we've been talking about in these sessions is that the section of the test that students are failing most often besides math is the writing skills portion. The writing skills portion is almost entirely made up of sentence combining. And sentence combining is also a really great way for students to learn grammar because they are learning it in use. We've been working in these sessions at a progression of sentence structures. We began with just asking students, what is a sentence? Let's figure out what a sentence is. It has a subject and a verb. Then we moved on to, if we want to combine sentences, we cut out repetitive information and we use commas in a series. So the first one is a model. So we'll kind of look at it together. Set one says, background knowledge is essential to reading comprehension. Background knowledge is an aid to memory. What's repeated in those three sentences? Okay. So we want to create a sentence where we don't have to repeat that over and over again. We're going to combine those sentences. And so there's a model for you. Background knowledge is necessary for reading comprehension, cognitive skills, and memory. And as I'm teaching this to students, I'm also teaching the commas because the task makers love commas. Once I had introduced that structure, students would be given STEM sentences that related to the contents, and students would be combining those STEM sentences into one sentence using commas. Okay, so someone who did number 2, I see 2 number 2s. Could they read theirs out loud?
Set 2, factual knowledge precedes skills because we don't learn skills in isolations, comma. Thinking well requires facts, comma, and critical thinking is intertwined with knowledge stored in our memories.
Okay, so you guys are teachers, so you can handle these complicated sentence structures with long clauses. If I was doing it with students, obviously it would begin with just 1, 2, 3, where they're just listing usually nouns, things. We move from commas in a series to combining sentences using fanboys or coordinating conjunctions. And then we teach them the rule, which is that you can combine 2 independent clauses using a coordinating conjunction such as and, but, or so. Those are the ones that we use most commonly. So here we have a sentence. They didn't want homework on their one night off. They did it anyway. Okay? So what coordinating conjunction would work there? What fanboy would work there? But. Okay. So they didn't want homework on their one day off, comma, because we need a comma before the fanboy, but they did it anyway. Okay. Once I introduce that structure of fanboys, I'm giving the students STEM sentences to combine, and the STEM sentences are based on content that we've read in class. So it's a way to review the content. And so you're going to do 2 things. You're going to fill in at least 2 vocabulary sentence starters, and you're going to combine at least 2 sentences up on the walls. And the vocabulary sentence starters are a way to review vocabulary without using up a lot of class time, because class time's at a premium for us. And that you can also do vocabulary and sentence combining at the same time.
Yeah. Many New England colonies. Do you agree with that? Many New England colonies were close to the end, made a living by fishing.
I mean, and could work. I think so could work as well.
And or so.
Yeah.
Commas, so it wasn't possible to grow cash crops there.
And many, who did that one?
Many New England colonies were close to the sea, comma, so many New Englanders made a living by fishing.
Okay, and so as we're going over these, we would be emphasizing the commas. Perhaps students would make some mistakes and we could correct them on the board. You can do all types of combinations with this, provided students have had the support before, they understand how to do this kind of sentence. I would never throw at them, make a sentence with fanboys. We would review commas with a series, I would introduce fanboys, and then the next time I would ask them to do sentences with fanboys. After I introduce fanboys, I generally introduce dependent clauses to help students understand. So you can combine sentences using a fanboy. You can also combine sentences using dependent clause words. So last time we worked with so to show cause and effect. And this time we worked with because and since. If I write this on the board, because the Virginia and Maryland colonies grew tobacco as a cash crop, I'll ask my students, is that a sentence? And some of them might be a little uncertain, but some of them will say, no, it's not a sentence. I'll say, why? And they'll say, well, it needs something. And so then I'll ask them to help me make it into a complete sentence. So then I'll say to students, so the reason that this is not a sentence is because is a dependent clause word. All right, so when you have that in front of a phrase, it's not a sentence. So it would be a sentence if we said the Virginia and Maryland colonies grew tobacco as a cash crop. That would be a sentence. But once we add because, it needs something more. It becomes dependent. It sort of needs to lean on something, if you will. Showing students that the dependent clause can come at the beginning of the sentence and then you need a comma after it, or the dependent clause can come at the end of the sentence. And helping them understand that both with so and because, they're both talking about cause and effect. So your cause needs to come first. So you may need to manipulate your clauses to make sure that your sentence makes sense and cause is coming before effect. So I'd like you to write a sentence about the relationship between the natural resources of the colonies and the products or their economy using because or since. One of the reasons it's a very good teaching approach is that it allows us to kill two birds with one stone. In the adult ed classroom, we're always very short of time. But when we use STEM sentences that draw upon content students have been learning, they're doing two things at once. So it's a very good use of our time in the classroom. Erna, just read the first one for us.
Okay, because the soil was rocky and the climate cold, New England focused on fishing and shipbuilding.
Then you switched it, and what is interesting to me is then the second half of your first sentence had to become the first half of your second sentence, so that when because is in the middle, you need to do that switching. The point that I want you to see is that you can tie the sentence combining to the cash crops and the climate and the soil and its relationship to the products is a cause and effect relationship. So you can introduce some cause and effect words, and you also want to introduce your forms slowly. So we started with commas in a series, then we moved to fanboys. And with students, we wouldn't just do 10 minutes with fanboys. We would be doing fanboys for a couple of classes, and then we would start to introduce dependent clause words kind of one at a time.